Imagine returning home after months away, exhausted from travel, and dreaming about finally sleeping in your own bed, only to discover that your key no longer works. The lock has been changed. When you peer through the window, you see strangers inside your living room unpacking their belongings. Your furniture is gone, your photos have vanished, and every trace of your life has disappeared. It sounds like a nightmare, but for a man named Michael, it was a shocking reality. Michael was a hard-working veteran who had spent years saving enough money to buy the home he had always dreamed about. All he wanted was a peaceful place where he could finally relax after years of service. Unfortunately, his nightmare had a name: Karen. Karen was the self-appointed ruler of the neighborhood's Homeowners Association. Michael had carefully chosen a home in what seemed like a quiet and welcoming suburb. The neighborhood was lined with tall oak trees, peaceful streets, and neighbors who appeared friendly at first glance. It felt like the perfect place to settle down. At least, that's what he thought in the beginning. From the moment he moved in, one person made it clear he wasn't exactly welcome. Karen, the president of the HOA, seemed to take a special interest in everything Michael did. According to her, his grass was always a little too long. His holiday decorations were in poor taste. She even filed a complaint about the color of the welcome mat at his front door. Michael was a calm and reasonable man, so he tried to cooperate whenever Karen approached him with complaint. He simply nodded politely and followed the ridiculous rules she demanded. He wanted to avoid conflict and keep the peace with the neighbors. After all, he was the only black man living on that quiet cul-de-sac, and he didn't want to give anyone an excuse to start trouble. But it seemed that for Karen, his presence alone was the problem. The real trouble began when Michael informed the HOA that he would be leaving for a 6-month overseas deployment. Although he had already served his country for years, he had accepted a consulting role that required him to travel abroad again. He was proud to continue serving, even in a different capacity. Before leaving, he did everything responsibly. He notified the HOA about his absence, provided them with his contact information, and hired a landscaping company to maintain his yard while he was gone. He believed he had covered every detail. He was wrong. For Karen, Michael's absence wasn't a moment to be a good neighbor. It was an opportunity. Karen had secretly wanted Michael's house ever since he moved in. It sat on the best lot in the neighborhood, offering the most beautiful sunset view on the block. She had convinced herself that the home should belong to her, and she was determined to get it. The moment Michael's plane left the ground, Karen began putting her plan into action. First, she started filing complaints against his property. She reported that his yard was overgrown, even though the landscaping service visited twice a week. She claimed there were safety problems with his fence, despite the fact that it was brand new. Using her authority as HOA president, she stacked violation after violation onto Michael's property record. Each complaint came with expensive fines. Of course, every notice was mailed to Michael's house, where no one was there to open them, exactly as Karen intended. The letters piled up inside the mailbox, unopened and unanswered. Her plan was simple: create a long paper trail that made it appear as though Michael had abandoned the home and refused to respond to the HOA's warnings. Once she had built that false record, Karen moved to the next stage of her scheme. She hired a shady attorney who specialized in exploiting loopholes in property law. Together, they manipulated the HOA's bylaws and forged documents to make it appear that Michael had ignored repeated violations. Using the fake fines as justification, they began foreclosure proceedings against his home. Since Michael was deployed overseas and couldn't respond, the process moved forward quickly. Karen controlled the HOA board, so no one questioned the situation. Soon, the foreclosure was pushed through in a quiet auction that attracted almost no attention. And the only bidder? A shell company secretly owned by Karen. For a ridiculously low price, she purchased Michael's house right out from under him. In her mind, it was the perfect crime. She had stolen a man's home without him even knowing it. Once the property was legally transferred into her name, Karen wasted no time. She hired a clean-out crew to empty the house. They weren't careful movers. They treated everything like garbage. Michael's furniture, his family photos, his military medals, and even his father's watch, items filled with priceless memories, were thrown away or hauled off to the dump. Some items were sold for quick cash, but most of his life's possessions were simply discarded. Within days, every trace of Michael had been erased from the house. Then Karen put the property back on the market, this time listing it at its full value. It sold quickly. A young family purchased a home, excited to move into their dream house, completely unaware of the fraud that had taken place. Karen walked away proud, wealthy, and convinced she had won. 6 months later, Michael returned home. He stepped off the plane exhausted, but happy to finally be back. After grabbing a taxi from the airport, he imagined nothing more than a quiet evening in his own house. But when the taxi turned onto the street, something felt wrong. There was a car in his driveway he didn't recognize. Lights were on inside the house. A child's bicycle rested on the lawn. Confusion quickly turned into dread. Michael walked up to the front door and tried his key. It didn't work. He knocked, and a man he had never seen before opened the door, looking confused. "Can I help you?" the man asked. Michael stood there in stunned silence. I live here," he finally managed to say. The new homeowner looked shocked, but calmly showed Michael the paperwork, the deed, the legal documents. Everything appeared legitimate, and every page carried Karen's signature. The horrifying truth began to sink in. His home, the place he had worked so hard to buy, had been stolen. For a moment, panic threatened to take over. But Michael wasn't just any homeowner. He was a veteran trained to remain calm under pressure. Instead of arguing, he thanked the confused family and assured them he would sort everything out. Then he made his first phone call, not to Karen, to his lawyer. Her name was Sarah, a sharp and fearless attorney who didn't tolerate nonsense. As Michael explained what happened, Sarah's expression shifted from disbelief to pure anger. This wasn't just a housing dispute. It was outright fraud. She told him firmly, "Don't worry, we're going to hit her where it hurts." Their secret weapon was a law Karen had completely ignored, the Service Member Civil Relief Act, known as the SCRA. This federal law protects active duty military members from certain legal actions while they are deployed, including foreclosure without a court order. Karen and her crooked lawyer had either overlooked the law or arrogantly assumed it wouldn't apply. But it did, and violating it was a federal crime. Within minutes of Michael's call, the first domino fell. Sarah sent an aggressive cease and desist letter to Karen outlining the violation of federal law and warning of severe penalties, massive fines, and even prison time. Copies of the letter were also sent to the title company, the real estate agent who handled the sale, and every member of the HOA board. Suddenly, everyone involved realized they might be part of federal offense. Panic spread quickly. The real estate agent's phone started ringing nonstop. The title company launched an internal investigation. HOA board members who had blindly trusted Karen realized they could be held responsible as well. The once powerful queen of the cul-de-sac suddenly found herself completely alone. Her confidence vanished, replaced by fear. She tried calling her lawyer, but he was already trying to distance himself from the situation. Her carefully planned scam collapsed almost instantly. The legal battle that followed was fast and devastating. With overwhelming evidence and the threat of federal charges, Karen's defense quickly fell apart. The court immediately voided the sale of Michael's home. Ownership was restored to him, but the consequences didn't stop there. Michael sued Karen personally for fraud, damages, and emotional distress. The court ordered her to pay all of Michael's legal fees, compensate him for the belongings that had been destroyed, and pay significant punitive damages for her malicious actions. The financial judgment was enormous. It forced Karen to sell her own home, the one she had been so proud of, just to pay him back. But the final blow came from the neighborhood itself. Once the truth spread, the community turned against her. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and unanimously voted to remove her from her position. She became a social outcast in the very neighborhood she once controlled. The young family who had unknowingly bought Michael's house were horrified when they learned the truth. They apologized repeatedly. Michael, being the kind man he was, assured them none of it was their fault. He even helped them find another house in a nearby neighborhood. In the end, Michael got his home back. It was empty, but it belonged to him again, with the support of his real neighbors. He slowly rebuilt his life. Karen lost everything, her money her position, her house, and her reputation. Her greed and prejudice ultimately destroyed her. The story stands as a powerful reminder that the law protects those who serve, and that justice, no matter how delayed, has a way of catching up. Michael returned home expecting peace, but walked into a nightmare. Yet in the end, he fought back and won, proving that the greatest revenge is not just living well, but ensuring that those who do wrong face the consequences. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story of justice, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more.